DLSS 5, NVIDIA's new, admittedly impressive, but also slightly horrifying tech, has lit the internet ablaze with controversy. It's applying what you might call AI slopification to in-game characters and the game environments in real time, with alleged artistic control. It's another one of those crazy on-off moments where the visual difference between using the tech and not using the tech is massive. And on one hand, we have people defending the tech, saying that games such as Starfield look immeasurably better, with even Bethesda's Todd Howard endorsing the tech, saying that it makes their game look like how he always wanted it to. On the other hand, people are pointing out that it seems like devs have very little control over the artistic styling, as it pushes every game towards generic character designs and away from original artistic vision and lighting. I decided to dig into what we know and see if I can figure out a little bit more about how it works and better determine if this reaction is overblown or totally deserved. And speaking of undeserved, some of the responses to the coverage of DLSS 5 have been insane. There's been death threats towards Digital Foundry. 2Clicks Philip had to try and keep his video from being taken down from people reporting it as sponsored content just because he wasn't absolutely slamming it. People need to remind themselves about the importance of discourse, discussion, having civil arguments. You're not going to convince anybody of your point by making a death threat or trying to take away their freedom of speech, their ability to even talk about something. I think this is a really important subject, and I think people need to be able to discuss it and have different opinions. And aside from threats being completely inappropriate and these types of actions trying to shut down videos that don't agree with your point are only weakening the anti-AI side of the argument, which I think otherwise has a lot of merit to it. So let's not muddy the waters with inappropriate behavior and actually discuss what's going on. You guys remember when DLSS was just that tech that made those little jaggy lines on the edges of in-game models disappear? Simpler times. Simpler times. Also, NVIDIA's new DLSS 4.5 tech, which was just shown off at GDC with dynamic frame gen and their new upscaling model, I think is actually really cool tech. Completely overshadowed by DLSS 5 news, but I guess it's a nice footnote that DLSS 4 is getting some solid upgrades behind the scenes. But let's move over to this DLSS 5 craziness. Firstly, the information made available to the public about how this all works is unusually high level. What I mean by this is that normally the mega nerds over at NVIDIA explain all their cool tech down to a crazy granular level with animated flowcharts of information passing into their chips and spitting out images, giving us a much deeper understanding of exactly what's going on, where it's happening, how it's happening, and just explained at a level that is truly impressive and cool of them. It's cool that they've been really proud of their image scaling tech and how it works, and they want to explain it. Not so much in the case with DLSS 5. DLSS 5 is a real-time neural rendering model that infuses pixels with photoreal lighting and materials. Cool. I understand that. You guys understand that, right? And I have scoured the internet for better explanations of this, and I found a lot of people basically making mass assumptions on how this works. It's been explained as relighting and reshading skin, hair, translucency, and using a learned model that explicitly understands characters and translucent skin. NVIDIA really seems to be avoiding saying anything like they're using some sort of image training model here, which is what we're used to from AI models. Officially, they have stated that it is trained end-to-end to understand scene semantics, including characters, hair, fabric, and translucent skin. Now, I think there's a few layers to the community reaction here. On the top layer, I think at a first glance, this tech looks extremely impressive. Like, I'll admit, when I first saw what it was doing with Starfield, I was like, holy crap, that is a massive upgrade over what it used to be. And I think a lot of people are having that reaction, and I think it is okay to have that reaction. Try not to freak out just yet. I think it's also fair to say that the tech NVIDIA has developed is impressive, even if it is using some techniques that I don't personally like or in the long run approve of. The behind the scenes tech for how they're getting this image gen stuff to work and not manipulate or transform from frame to frame is impressive. That's been something that I don't know if anybody else has actually solved that yet, and I don't entirely know how NVIDIA has solved it. So on the tech side of things, it's quite impressive what they're doing here. Then I think there is the deeper layer of reactions here going, well, how much control are devs actually having over this? Is this just a generic AI slop filter being applied on everything? And if so, isn't it just going to make all the games look like the same generic AI slop? And then NVIDIA hits us with a lot of weird techno babble and even contradicting statements, with Jensen saying that it's modifying things at the geometric level and other things saying that it's only changing textures and lighting. So you're like, well, is it geometry or is it textures and lighting? Fortunately, I think we can actually cut through all this techno babble and just kind of get to the heart of the problem here. There is no way that a graphics card knows what a human face should look like unless we tell it what a human face should look like. The way that AI training models have done this so far is to train on thousands of images from either artists or photographers from across the internet to build image models that end up being some sort of aggregate of artistic work or photographer representation of the world. Basically, they're trained on a volume of information. However, this volume of information is often exaggerated and highly stylized, a hyperbolic representation of reality, if you will. The photos that make it online are not normal representations of what we look like. We're not posting our bad photos. Artists aren't posting their bad artwork. Hell, even our phone cameras already auto color grade and filter for us because we like to look good in our photos, and phone manufacturers know that. So everything that is posted and put on the internet is an exaggeration. And AI is training en masse on this exaggerated content. So when you ask AI to enhance a photo of someone, it's not doing it from its own interactions with reality. It's doing it from a highly skewed data pool that assumes we all want to look hot or some variation of that. I fed the same DLSS off image of Resident Evil to ChatGPT and told it to make the person in the image look more realistic by changing the lighting and maybe even texturing of their skin, hair, and eyes. And just like DLSS 5, it's taking its own artistic license and making the lips a little bit fuller, adding some freckles to the face, and kind of hotifying the character. Does it look more realistic? Sure, but in a hyper-stylized way that I have very little control over. Now, NVIDIA have stated that developers have detailed controls for intensity, color grading, and masking to decide where and how the effect is applied to maintain the game's intended aesthetic. In layman's terms, you can dial in how much it's on or off in specific areas of the game, not train it on your game's art style or feed it highly detailed character renders of what you want your characters to look like. And it's even unclear how much control you might have over some of the post-processing in the game. As far as I can tell, it is a one-size AI image gen filter for everything. I know NVIDIA doesn't want to call it a filter, but I mean, for the lack of better terminology at this point, it is upscaling, improving faces based on data that comes from somewhere, but everybody is subjected to that same data, whether you want the hyper-realistic, overly stylized faces or not. If this tech succeeds, and there is a very good chance it will, then many of our game's best-looking graphics may be governed by generic AI image models, making them all look kind of the same. Now, sure, NVIDIA could train a bunch of different image models from which devs could then pick and choose from, giving them slightly more control, but unless devs are able to make their own image models highly stylized to their vision of the game, then we're going to get a lot of samey looking games down the road. Now, there are some major caveats to this tech. Firstly, the demos were running on systems with dual 5090 GPUs. Those cards are selling for like $4,500 each right now, and the release date for this tech is later this year. So it doesn't give NVIDIA a lot of time to dial in the performance of this. So it could be relegated to people who have supercomputers. And I'm not saying that they won't optimize it, but it just might be out of the reach for most gamers, at least when it launches. Kind of like RTX when it launched. There just weren't many gamers that had the hardware to run it, and frankly not that many games that were taking advantage of it. It's also very much aimed at image enhancements. Which comes at the cost of performance, likely a very big one based on them needing dual 5090s for the demo. So anyone trying to maintain high frame rates like an Arc Raiders or a competitive game will likely see not much value in using this tech, at least for a while. Obviously, NVIDIA has improved all of this stuff massively over the years, so we can use stuff like RTX in high frame rate games now. DLSS 5 is also locked to NVIDIA tech, just like all other iterations of DLSS. So PlayStation runs on AMD, Xbox runs on AMD, Switch 2 is technically on NVIDIA, but probably doesn't have the horsepower to run this tech anyway. So how many developers are going to spend a lot of time optimizing for DLSS 5 stuff? It might not be that many. Then again, I think that's kind of the point, is that devs just sort of turn it on, set a few dials, and that's all they have to do to get it up and running. And if it really is that easy, then maybe we'll see more deployment than we think. But it should, at least for a while, prevent devs from becoming reliant on DLSS 5 to make their games look good. If people don't have access to DLSS 5, you still got to make the game look good with basic graphics settings. Now, ultimately, the consumers control the market. Do gamers like this look? Do more people like it than dislike it? If there is a demand, executives and studios will push for it. And not to be too much of a cynic about this, but AAA games are already starting to look very safe and samey when it comes to their styling. Everything's sort of moving towards more realism as well, making the artistic and visual differences between games even more subtle. And I have a hard time envisioning a future where this kind of tech just isn't front and center and highly demanded. I just hope that by the time we get to the point of mass adoption for these AI overlays for in-game graphics, and you can bet that AMD's probably working on their own version of this as well, that we'll at least have more artistic control, where devs will make a good case and say, hey, we need control over these image models if you want us to use them. And hopefully that is in the cards or planned for it. Otherwise, we're all going to be playing games that look stylistically identical. Who knows, maybe this will allow indie devs to further differentiate themselves from the AAA market and capture more of it. Tech is changing so fast right now. I swear every year there's a total paradigm shift in the way that things are going and what tech we have available to us. It is so hard to predict the future at this point. DLSS 5 is crazy. It is impressive in many ways, and I'll give NVIDIA some credit for that, but I'm also terrified by the actual implications of how this could be deployed. I really think NVIDIA need to go back to the drawing board and dial in the artistic control, otherwise this could be an absolute disaster. What do you guys think though? I mean, it's really up to you. Do you like the look of this? Would you prefer to play Starfield with DLSS 5 on? I think I personally might, but that's also due to Starfield looking kind of jank on its base settings. Other games though, like Resident Evil 9, where the characters already look incredible, I probably wouldn't want a filter over them to sort of mess with the original artistic intent. Again, what do you guys think? I want to hear all about it in the comments. And up next, check out this video on some of the best FPS campaigns ever made. One of the hardest genres to do right. The top ones are incredible. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.